Welcome to Immigration Unpacked, real legal help for Immigrant.
Hello and welcome to Immigration Unpacked, real legal help for immigrants with Kevin J. Stewart. Kevin is a dedicated immigration attorney committed to helping individuals and families across California and beyond. My name is Kevin Rosenquist. I am your host. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about why Kevin chose immigration law and how it shapes the Bay Area's entrepreneurial ecosystem. Kevin, great to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Yes, great to meet you too, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. Obviously a big topic in this country, immigration. And let's just start with a little bit about you. Can you tell us about the mission and values of your firm and how you help individuals and businesses as well in the Bay Area?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mission and goal is to reach out to folks who need help navigating the complexities of the immigration, the immigration law area. And it's one of these things where people don't have an idea outside of it. They sometimes do their own study, and it's easy for them to get crossed up in all of the details. So that's my primary focus, is getting people through the process and getting them the relief that they're seeking.
Are you suggesting that getting your information off the internet is not always easy and all inclusive, and does it? You're saying that there's false information out there?
So it's a combination. So the thing is that there's a lot of information, and even we use the internet as attorneys and people that help folks to navigate the process. But we notice where, as an example, fees, the fee that you pay to file an application, it's very hard to find accurate information about that. Even when you go to the website of the agency, whether that's USCIS or Department of State, you have to make sure that you're in the right place, and you have to make sure that you've accounted for everything that's involved in your application. So even something simple like that can mess you up.
What inspired you to specialize in immigration law?
I live in an area here in the Bay Area that is incredibly diverse. I mean, which, we have 70, 80 languages spoken. People from all over the world come here. I think there's a lot of focus right now on the Latin American community, Hispanic community, which is large here, but we also have folks from India, China, obviously in large numbers, Southeast Asia, Philippines, you could go on and on, Afghanistan, areas like Fremont. So there are a lot of resettled and very tight-knit communities that help each other to come to the U.S. And then once these folks are here, then they support them. And so I think just living here, I was exposed to that. I had practiced in other areas previously, but for the last 10 years or so, I've focused solely on immigration law.
What keeps you passionate about this area of legal practice?
I get calls from people and they're in tears, and that's just over issues involved with their status. And, it really tears you apart. Sometimes there's nothing that we can do. And of course, that's always a very difficult situation. But in other cases, people are actually very hopeful. They're willing to follow your direction, take the steps that they need to. And the rewarding part is coming to the end of that. I was able to call a couple yesterday. They started the process about 3 years ago with a process we call military parole in place, where usually it's the spouse of an applicant, can get legal status for their spouse where they couldn't otherwise. And so you go through that process. That's like a humanitarian process that's done locally at the field office, and that takes a lot of time. Then once they get that, then you're able to apply for a green card for them. And so yesterday was the day that I thought I only had one approval for them, but I went online, I looked, I had two. So their process is done. Next thing, they'll get their green card. So, to hear the relief for them, to hear that they and their child, who's born in the last year or two, now has this stability in their family, it's just a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Can you talk about how the growing entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Bay Area shapes the work you do with business owners seeking to navigate immigration law?
I really have focused in the past a lot on family spouse visa. You do a lot of those, and then have moved into H-1B, which is really a more or less temporary way for folks to come to the U.S. and work.
And in the news a lot these days.
Yeah, you hear about it a lot, and
Right.
it's interesting because they really haven't done anything with it, right?
Yeah.
Elon is going to do this and that, and it's like, it's way too big for them to touch.
Yeah.
But that's a huge area people are aware of. The thing that people are looking more at now, and what we're focusing on in several cases currently, two major areas for non-immigrant status. There's the O1A visa, which allows you to come and work, again, 3-year periods that you can renew. And then there are immigrant classes of EB1A, which is sometimes referred to as the Einstein green card. That's extraordinary ability. And then there's another level, EB2, national interest waiver. And so these are the areas of focus. It's a lot of alphabet soup,
So can you walk us through the process for entrepreneurs and startups seeking to hire talent from abroad? What are some pitfalls that they should try to avoid?
Sure. Well, and I think one of the things that I think is hard for people to relate to when they're looking at immigration law in the U.S. is there are two major categories that you have to always keep in mind. In fact, even for those of us that practice, if you're focused on one, you don't really look at the other. But the first is what we call non-immigrant. So non-immigrant category means that you don't have an intention to remain in the U.S. You're coming either temporarily to work or temporarily to study. So typically that's what we call, it would be the F1 visa for students or like H-1B for workers. So those are both non-immigrant categories. The non-immigrant category people are most familiar with is the B1, B2 visa, the visitor visa. So these, you can move between these statuses. The key thing is that in most cases, you're not considered to have what we call immigrant intent. You're not intending to stay. The reality is that many people come in a non-immigrant status and they do ultimately intend to immigrate. So there's no problem with that. You just have to always be aware that they're different. So that's the first category. The next category is immigrant visas, and that's where you intend to come to the U.S. and permanently reside. So that generally that's the path to a green card. So as an employer, you want to make sure that the person coming has valid non-immigrant status initially. It's rare that you would, unless you actually sponsored them to come under some green card process, then they're not coming on that status. So in most cases, they could come as a visitor. They can't work. So these are the things you have to keep track of. So B1 business or B2 tourist can't work. They can come and you can explore opportunities, but you can't work under that.
Okay.
So anyhow, you have to watch out for that, but you always want to make sure that they're what we call in status as a non-immigrant.
What role do you play in helping businesses navigate the complexities of this world?
So whenever an employer approaches us, so let's say, for example, H-1B is a very common situation. O-1A companies can sponsor folks with extraordinary ability. So we take them through the whole process. We help the potential worker to prepare, and then we also help the petitioner to get their process together. So we kind of manage both ends of it. So there's travel, there's going from one status to another. In some cases, we'll help a worker come in, say, visitor status, and then prepare their petition on behalf of the company or on behalf of them themselves while they're here. Because while they're here, it's just much easier to do than when they're abroad. So you're trying to kind of get them here in a status that you can help them put their application together and then get that through quickly, hopefully.
Makes sense. And what role do you see immigration law playing in the success of Bay Area startups, especially when it comes to hiring foreign talent or even scaling globally?
There's a lot of focus right now on self-petitioning. And it's actually been expanded a little bit, even in H-1B. I mean, it's too much detail to go into in the time that we have. But in the past, for H-1B, even though it's non-immigrant status, what you could do was really limited. So it has to be a specialty occupation, and you have to have a degree that's closely related to that. And then you really can only work for the company that petitioned for you.
Okay.
So now the rules have been changed to where you can actually work for a company that you own under H-1B. This is a very recent change at the end of the Biden administration. There hasn't been any alteration of that so far that I'm aware of, but that opens up a lot of opportunity that wasn't there for entrepreneurs in that H-1B category. Also in the O-1A category, you can now petition for yourself in a similar way, which also in the past was not really accepted by the agency. And so this is another area. There are some additional special entrepreneurial things. There's an entrepreneurial parole program. There's all sorts of ways that so you can come and then you can actually start your own business with venture capital in some cases, and then sponsor yourself as a worker or become employed by one of these startups. I think the thing is you just always have to make sure that you're in the right timeline, that you keep your status. It's very important. Let's say, for example, you have a layoff. In H-1B, you only have 60 days to find a new job. In other categories, it can be even less. Sometimes you have to basically leave the country at the next available opportunity. So those are the things you have to kind of keep track of.
That's interesting. The entrepreneurial thing is super interesting that's a change. Have you helped a lot of entrepreneurs starting businesses in that respect kind of navigate the challenges that go along with it?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we do, this is mainly in the H-1B area, is we can file a change of status. So let's say, for example, you get laid off and then you want to explore other opportunities, but you want to have time to do that. Then we can change your status to B1, B2, so that during that time, technically you're not working, but you're job hunting, and you have to show that you have the resources for that. But that's one area, it gives you a little flexibility, so let's say going from an employee to an entrepreneurial job. The other area is that sometimes founders that we work with have people working as interns, and they want to establish a higher level position. So starting as an intern, we can then take them along to a status of, say, this O-1A or potentially even EB-1 or EB-2 on the way to a green card. So that's how we usually help, is putting everything together. And sometimes the founders themselves, isn't just workers, get them to a more stable status, long-lasting status.
So I'm going to end with a question that is big and probably we don't have time to completely unpack, but obviously there's a lot of changes that are happening with immigration given the new administration coming in, some campaign promises, blah, blah, blah. We all know the story if you read the news. Looking ahead, how do you see immigration law evolving in the coming few years, especially in the context of the tech industry and entrepreneurship, specifically where you are in the Bay Area?
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to phrase it, because a lot of people don't understand, and I kind of want to get this out there. Immigration law is not primarily partisan. We have this thing set up where, the Democrats are for people coming illegally and Republicans are for more control. And the reality is that neither party wants to do anything substantive on immigration at all. I mean, we've seen that for years. So the system more or less chugs along as it is, and we're stuck as immigration attorneys trying to keep up with where things are going. So to that, answer your question, where I see it going is really not changing that much. I mean, they are not going to be stapling green cards to your diploma, at all. That's just not going to happen. I mean, Trump wanted to talk about that. And by the same token, Democrats are not going to, if, when and if they get in again, they're not going to be able to do anything drastic. I would say the only thing that people need to keep in mind is that what's going on with the crackdown on undocumented folks, that's not limited to any one group, or it's not, it doesn't exclude entrepreneurs or people in that status. I mean, you could run afoul of ICE, as a PhD, H-1B, it doesn't matter.
You don't have to be a gang member to be getting kicked out. Yeah,
absolutely. So your situation is that your employer, you have to keep track of what that status is. And when in doubt, sometimes it is better to just depart. And we counsel people through that. And if there are issues with that, reasons you can't go back to your home country, then, we can address that as well. But the main thing is, don't assume that because Elon likes H-1B, for example, that, the changes that we would have wanted to see around a little bit of help for entrepreneurs, that's already happening. And the process is not changing drastically.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Immigration Unpacked, real legal help for immigrants with Kevin J. Stewart. To connect with Kevin, head to oaklandimmigrationlaw.com, and please like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Kevin, it was so great having you here. I'm really looking forward to the next discussion.
Yeah, thanks. Me too.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.